Right now, an entire continent is silently breaking apart, and almost no one is talking about it. The ground is splitting, land is collapsing, and something deep beneath the earth is forcing its way upward, reshaping the world in ways we're only beginning to understand. I used to believe something most of us never question, that the ground beneath our feet is permanent, unshakable, reliable, the one thing in this world that doesn't suddenly change without warning. But then I saw something I can't unsee. A road, split in half like it had been torn apart from below. Not cracked, not damaged. Torn, as if something underneath had forced its way up, pushing the land outward until it simply gave up. And it wasn't just a road. Entire sections of earth had collapsed into long, dark fissures. In some places, you could stand at the edge and not see the bottom clearly. Houses were left hanging on one side or gone completely. At first, I thought it had to be fake, edited footage, something exaggerated for attention, but it wasn't. This is happening right now, not in some distant future, not in theory, but in real time, in parts of East Africa, where the ground itself is slowly and sometimes suddenly pulling apart. And the strangest part is how quiet it all feels. No global panic, no breaking headlines everywhere, no sense that something this massive is even happening. It made me pause. Because if something as fundamental as the land beneath us can change like this, what else have we been assuming is stable? Welcome to Hidden Truth Channel. I've spent the past few days going deeper into this than I expected to. At first, it was just curiosity, one of those things you see online and can't quite explain. But the more I looked into it, the more unsettling it became. Because this isn't just a crack in the ground, it's not even a series of cracks. What we're looking at is part of something much bigger, something that stretches across thousands of kilometers, cutting through countries, landscapes, and lives. A system so large that you can see it from space. A process that scientists say could eventually reshape the entire region, an entire continent, beginning to split apart. And I know how that sounds. It sounds dramatic, almost unbelievable. But when you start connecting the pieces, real footage, geological data, first-hand accounts, it stops feeling like a distant scientific concept. It starts to feel immediate. And that's what stayed with me. Because we build our lives on the assumption that the ground is fixed, that continents don't just change within our lifetime, that whatever forces shape the earth operate far too slowly for us to ever notice. But what if that's not entirely true? What if some of those changes are already happening, just slow enough that we ignore them until they're not? That question pulled me in deeper than I expected. Because once you accept that this is real, the next question becomes impossible to ignore. What could possibly be powerful enough to tear a continent apart from the inside? And more importantly, why is it happening now? Before we go further, if you're into exploring hidden truths like this, things that don't always make the headlines but probably should, take a second to subscribe. It really helps support the channel and keeps this kind of content going, because what we're about to uncover goes far beyond a simple crack in the ground. This is just the surface, and the deeper you look, the less stable everything starts to feel. If what we're seeing on the surface is only the beginning, then the real story has to be hidden somewhere deeper. The first time I tried to understand this from a scientific point of view, I almost felt relieved. There was a framework for it, a system, something that made it feel controlled, predictable, like this wasn't chaos, but part of a process we've already mapped out. The explanation starts with plate tectonics. The Earth's outer layer isn't a single solid shell. It's divided into massive plates that slowly move over a softer layer beneath them. Continents aren't fixed structures. They're passengers on these drifting plates, carried over millions of years. In the case of Africa, the story becomes more specific. What we call the African continent is actually sitting on a large tectonic plate that, according to geologists, is no longer holding together as one piece. It's gradually splitting into two major sections, the Nubian plate on the western side and the Somali plate on the eastern side. And they are moving apart, very slowly, about 6 to 7 millimeters per year. That number stuck with me, because on its own, it sounds insignificant, almost dismissible. It's roughly the rate at which your fingernails grow. I remember thinking, that can't be what's causing all of this. Because nothing that slow should look that violent. Nothing that gradual should result in land tearing open, roads collapsing, or entire sections of terrain shifting in a matter of moments. But that's when I realized something important. Movement isn't the same as release. These plates don't glide smoothly like ice on water. They get stuck, locked together by friction deep beneath the surface. And while they're stuck, something else begins to build. Pressure. It accumulates quietly, almost invisibly, over years, decades, sometimes even centuries. There are no obvious signs on the surface, no warnings that people would recognize. Just a slow, steady increase in tension deep within the earth. Until eventually, something gives, and when it does, all of that stored energy is released at once. That's when the ground splits. That's when what looked stable suddenly isn't. Understanding that changed how I saw everything. Because it means what we're witnessing isn't just slow movement, it's a system that alternates between silence and sudden release. Long periods of nothing, followed by moments that feel completely out of proportion. But even that explanation started to feel incomplete the deeper I looked, because it assumes something very clean. A simple separation, like pulling two sides apart along a straight line. That's not what we see in reality. The fractures across East Africa don't behave like a single tear. They branch. They curve. They appear in places that don't line up neatly with the idea of a clean split. It's irregular, messy, almost unpredictable. And that's where I came across something that made the whole situation feel far more complex. There's another piece involved, not a small one either. It's called the Victoria microplate, and it's enormous, roughly the size of Germany. It includes Lake Victoria and stretches across parts of Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. But what makes it unusual isn't just its size, it's what it's doing. It's rotating. Very slowly, almost imperceptibly, this massive block of crust is turning counterclockwise, wedged between the Nubian and Somali plates as they move apart. And once I understood that, everything started to shift in my mind. Because now this isn't just a separation. It's a system under competing forces. Two massive plates pulling away from each other, while a third block in between is being twisted. And when pressure comes from multiple directions, the result isn't a clean break. It's fracture, irregular, unpredictable fracture, like a piece of glass under uneven stress. It doesn't crack in a straight line. It splinters in ways you can't fully predict. That explains why some of these fissures seem to appear suddenly in places that don't fit a simple model. It explains why the landscape doesn't just open neatly, but shifts in complex patterns. But even after understanding all of that, there was still something that didn't sit right with me. Because this entire explanation describes how the plates are moving, but it doesn't fully explain why they're moving in the first place. Something has to be driving this. Something beneath the plates. Something powerful enough to create that tension, to push, to pull, to twist entire sections of a continent over time. And that's where the science starts to point deeper, far deeper than most of us ever think about. Beneath the crust, beneath the plates, there's a layer of the Earth that behaves less like solid rock and more like a very slow-moving fluid. And within that layer, there are currents, massive flows of heat and material rising and falling over unimaginable timescales. Some scientists believe that beneath Africa, there is something even more significant. A massive upwelling of superheated material rising from deep within the mantle. A kind of plume, so large and so slow that we don't experience it directly, but powerful enough to push upward against the crust above it. If that's true, then what we're seeing at the surface isn't just plates drifting apart. It's pressure from below, slowly forcing the continent to stretch, weaken, and eventually break. And that idea stayed with me, because it means the cracks we see, the ones that split roads and swallow land, aren't random. They're the visible edge of something much larger, something that's been building for a very long time, and might still be building now. If those forces beneath the surface are real, then at some point they have to show themselves, and when they do, it doesn't always happen gradually. One story I came across kept replaying in my mind long after I read it. It happened in March of 2018, in a quiet village in Kenya. Nothing dramatic, nothing unusual, just days of steady rain, the kind that blends into the background of everyday life. A man named Eliud Njoroge was at home with his wife. They had finished dinner. The house was calm, familiar, safe. And then, something shifted. Not violently, not with the kind of shaking you'd expect from an earthquake. Instead, it started with a sound, sharp, dry, almost like something cracking under pressure. He later described it as something that didn't belong, a sound that made you stop, even if you didn't understand why. Then came a deeper noise, a low, heavy rumble, but not from outside, from below. That detail stayed with me because it flips something instinctive in your mind. We're wired to look outward when something feels wrong. But in that moment, the danger wasn't approaching. It was already underneath them. Within seconds, the ground inside their home began to give way. The floor split open, a wall tilted, then collapsed. Part of the house didn't just break, it disappeared into a dark opening that hadn't existed moments before. Eliud managed to pull his wife away just in time, and by morning, it became clear that this wasn't an isolated collapse. A massive fissure had cut across the landscape, stretching through fields, crossing paved roads, slicing directly through parts of the village. From above, it looked almost unnatural, too straight, too deliberate, as if something had drawn a line across the Allard and forced it apart. In some places, the gap reached around 20 meters wide and up to 15 meters deep. That's not just damage, that's displacement. At first, the explanation seemed simple. Heavy rainfall had weakened the soil, causing it to collapse. And part of me wanted to accept that. It's easier to believe in surface-level causes. But when geologists examined the site, they noticed something else. The fissure aligned almost perfectly with an ancient tectonic fault. It didn't curve around terrain the way water erosion would. It cut straight through it. And that changes the story, because it suggests that what happened wasn't just the ground collapsing, it was the ground moving. And once I saw it that way, I started noticing a pattern. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened, and it wasn't the largest. Back in 2005, in the Afar region of Ethiopia, the Earth didn't just crack quietly, it responded. Over the course of about 10 days, the region experienced more than 100 small earthquakes. Not individually devastating, but constant, like a system under pressure trying to release something it could no longer hold. Then, Almost all at once, a massive rift opened across the desert, stretching for about 60 kilometers. It didn't take centuries. It happened in days. And during that event, something else emerged from below. Magma. Hot, molten rock rising into the fracture, accompanied by gases escaping into the air. The surface shifted, dropped, reshaped itself in real time. What we usually associate with deep ocean floors, the creation of new crust, was happening on land. That realization changed how I looked at everything, because it means these events aren't just accidents, they're expressions, moments when the deeper forces finally reach the surface. And if that's true, then what we're seeing now isn't just a series of isolated incidents, it's a process unfolding. One that doesn't move at a constant pace, one that builds quietly and then suddenly reveals itself. And the unsettling part is, we don't always know when that moment is coming. And if the Earth can release that kind of force without much warning, then maybe the cracks themselves aren't the most dangerous part. What unsettled me the most wasn't the ground splitting open. It was what can come out of those openings. Things you don't see, don't hear, and don't realize are there until it's already too late. There's an event I kept coming back to while trying to make sense of this. It happened in 1986 near a volcanic lake in Cameroon. There were no dramatic signs leading up to it. No eruption, no visible destruction, nothing that would make people leave or even feel uneasy. And then, overnight, an entire community stopped breathing. Over 1,700 people lost their lives, along with thousands of animals. Not because of fire, not because of collapsing land, but because of something invisible. Carbon dioxide. For years, gas had been slowly building up beneath the lake, dissolved in deep water under pressure. Then, something disturbed that balance. Maybe a small shift underground, maybe a subtle release of energy from below. Whatever it was, it triggered a sudden release. The gas surged upward, escaped the water, and spread outward across the land. And because carbon dioxide is heavier than air, it didn't rise into the sky. It stayed low. It moved silently through the valley, displacing oxygen as it went. People didn't run. They didn't panic. They simply inhaled and lost consciousness within moments. That's what makes it so difficult to process. No warning, no sound, no visible threat, just absence. And once I understood that, it changed how I saw these rift zones entirely. Because they're not just cracks in solid rock. They're pathways, open channels connecting the surface to deeper systems we don't fully see. In East Africa, there are multiple deep lakes sitting along this rift system. Some of them, like Lake Kivu, are known to contain large amounts of dissolved gases, including both carbon dioxide and methane, trapped in the depths under pressure. That doesn't mean disaster is inevitable, but it does mean the conditions exist. And that idea stayed with me, because it shifts the focus from what we can observe to what we can't. At the same time, there are places along this rift that feel almost unreal in a completely different way. I remember looking at images of Dalol in Ethiopia and thinking they didn't belong on this planet. Bright yellow mineral fields, pools of liquid with colors that seem almost artificial, air so hot and chemically active that even standing there becomes difficult. But what really stood out wasn't how extreme it looked. It was how empty it was. In some of the most active areas, researchers found no stable microbial life, no organisms adapting, no hidden ecosystems surviving in the margins, just chemistry, heat, and silence. And then, not too far away, there's Lake Natron, where the water is so alkaline that it preserves animals in place, turning them into mineral-coated forms that look almost sculpted. Two environments shaped by the same system, one where life struggles to exist, another where it's preserved in stillness. And somewhere between those extremes, there's a possibility that I couldn't ignore. Because science has already shown us that life can exist far below the surface, in places with no sunlight, under intense pressure, feeding on chemical energy instead of light. A hidden biosphere. And what the rift is doing, in a way, is opening a connection between those depths and the world above. I'm not saying something unknown is coming out of the ground, but I am saying this. The deeper I looked into this system, the more it stopped feeling like something simple. Because once you realize that these fractures are not just breaking the surface, but connecting layers of the planet that are usually sealed off, you start to see them differently. Not just as cracks, but as access points. And that changes the question entirely. It's no longer just about what the Earth is doing, it's about what else might be part of that process, whether we fully understand it or not. And once you start seeing these fractures as part of something much deeper, it becomes impossible to think of them as temporary, because this isn't a moment, it's a direction. The more I sat with everything I had learned, the more I realized that what's happening in East Africa isn't just a series of events, it's a transition already in progress. Not something that might happen one day, but something that has already begun, quietly moving forward whether we notice it or not. Geologists don't really debate the outcome anymore. They debate the timeline. Because if the current motion continues, and all evidence suggests it will, the eastern part of Africa will eventually separate from the rest of the continent. The Somali plate will keep drifting away, carrying with it vast regions of land that today are still connected. And in the space that opens between them, something new will form. Water will find its way in, not all at once, not like a sudden flood swallowing everything overnight, but gradually, persistently, following the path of least resistance, filling the low points, expanding over time, until what used to be land becomes coastline, and what used to be coastline becomes something else entirely, a new ocean. I tried to picture that, not as a distant concept, but as a real transformation. Cities that are now inland eventually sitting near the edge of the sea. Landscapes we recognize today reshaped into something unfamiliar. Boundaries we've drawn on maps slowly becoming irrelevant. And what struck me wasn't just the scale of it, it was how indifferent the process is. Because from the perspective of the planet, nothing unusual is happening. This is how Earth evolves. Continents break apart, oceans open, plates shift, and over millions of years, entirely new configurations take shape. It has happened before, it will happen again, but for us, it feels different. Because we live on a time scale where change is supposed to be visible, understandable, manageable. We expect cause and effect to be close together. We expect stability to be the default, and yet, beneath all of that, there's a system operating on a completely different rhythm. Slow enough that we ignore it, powerful enough that we can't stop it. That contrast is hard to sit with, because it means that everything we build, every city, every road, every assumption about where things belong, is resting on something that is not fixed, only temporarily stable. And maybe that's the part that stayed with me the most. Not the cracks themselves, not even the events we've already seen, but the idea that this entire transformation is already written into the physics of the planet, that the outcome, in some sense, is inevitable, and we are just here, in the early stages of it, watching pieces of it reveal themselves, one fracture at a time. So when I look back at those images, the roads split apart, the land opening, the quiet, almost unnoticed nature of it, I don't just see isolated incidents anymore. I see the beginning of a coastline that doesn't exist yet, a map that hasn't been drawn, and a process that doesn't need our awareness to continue, which leaves me with one question I can't quite shake. If the Earth has already decided what this region will become, then what we're witnessing now isn't the change itself. It's just the first visible sign that the change is already underway. And maybe the real question isn't whether it will happen. It's whether we'll recognize it for what it is, before it's already too far along to ignore. When I step back and look at everything we've explored, what stays with me isn't just the science or the scale of what's happening, it's the perspective it forces on us. We spend most of our lives thinking in terms of stability. We assume the world around us is fixed, predictable, something we can build on without questioning too much. We plan our lives around that belief. We invest time, energy, and meaning into places we assume will always be there. But the deeper you look into processes like this, the slow separation of a continent, the silent buildup of pressure beneath the surface, you start to realize something important. Stability is not permanent. It's temporary. And that doesn't mean we should live in fear. It means we should live with awareness. Because the truth is, change doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it builds quietly, beneath the surface, long before it becomes visible. And by the time we notice it, the process has already been underway for a long time. That idea applies far beyond geology. In life, the biggest shifts often don't happen overnight. They grow slowly, in habits, in decisions, in directions we don't fully question at the time. And just like the Earth, those small, almost invisible movements can eventually lead to changes that reshape everything. So maybe the lesson here isn't about continents or tectonic plates. Maybe it's about paying attention, about understanding that what feels stable today might be changing in ways we don't immediately see. About being aware of the foundations we build our lives on, whether they're strong, flexible, or quietly under pressure. And more importantly, it's about perspective. Because while change can feel unsettling, it's also what allows growth, transformation, and new beginnings to exist in the first place. The Earth isn't breaking in the way we might think. It's evolving. And maybe, in our own way, we are too. So here's a simple question I'd genuinely like to hear your thoughts on. Do you think change in life usually happens suddenly, or does it build slowly beneath the surface before we finally notice it? Feel free to share your perspective down in the comments so everyone can learn from each other. And if you found this kind of exploration interesting, these deeper looks into things we usually overlook, consider subscribing to support the channel. It really helps keep these conversations going, and there's a lot more ahead to uncover together.